Yes.
30 seconds to go now to the green light. Sauber, I think, ahead of the queue.
A morning warm-up in Melbourne. It's not great weather conditions. You can see everybody on wet weather tyres as we get ready.
Ben, but just contrast the different design of the tread pattern of the Bridgestone, which is on the car, and Massa's car. There you can see the McLaren, so it's difficult to see right now. Totally different philosophy, entire design. It'll be interesting to see how each company contends with these conditions.
These conditions are a little similar to the first free practice of the weekend, John, and it was noticeable there that the Bridgestone runners seem to have the advantage, so maybe we should keep an eye on which teams, which tyres are running near the top.
Yes, I think in fact, looking at the conditions just as they come out of the pits, all the cars coming out of one big group, I would think that in fact there's more water. It may not just be literally on the surface, it'll be just slightly subsurface. Wait until you see these cars file all the way around the track, particularly around the back end of the track where you exit out of turn 6. We'll make a note of that for you when we get there. I think you'll see the level of spray will be very, very considerable indeed.
Coming through turn 5, Mark Webber leads them round again, the Australian driver making his debut this weekend for the Minardi team and doing a good job in qualifying yesterday. Qualified 18th, and he said before that he would be pleased to qualify in around that position. And it's fantastic that the locals have a man to cheer once again in Formula One racing. It's been a while.
Well, there's the spray. You've got two cars side by side. Eddie Irvine decides it's time to get in front. And that's just literally on the outlet. They're not running at racing speeds. They're just building up. And these conditions are not as bad, obviously, as they were in qualifying. But they certainly, I think, are worse than they were on Friday morning.
The two Toyotas here now. These two cars are making their debut. It's the debut of the Toyota Formula One team. Respectable effort yesterday, John, from both of them with... and we've got a problem there for Felipe Massa in the Sauber, just about where his teammate kept slowing down yesterday.
I mean, this is 3 times now we've seen on screen a Sauber has pulled off track. This is on the exit of turn 7, on that long sweeping curve as they come up. And really a bit of a scary place, particularly in these conditions. Even though they've got this new improved light system in the back of the car, you see them flashing like a strobe, much, much clearer than the previous light systems that they used to use. There, Jackie Eckhart looking very worried indeed in the Sauber pits. What have we done? I mean, oh, please. Now, this could easily see the circuit again, depending where Massa pulls off. In these conditions, they might decide very quickly just to throw the red flag out and bring that car back, particularly if visibility is to get worse.
Now, yesterday they were saying it was some sort of fuel pressure problem for Nick Heidfeld when he kept stopping out the back there, but it seems to be exactly the same place for Felipe Massa as he coasts around very, very slowly. I don't know whether he's still got any drive there or not.
I think he has. What he's got is he's basically got no throttle. What's happening is there is a preset in the computer on the engine which enables the engine to tick over literally at about 3,000 RPM. It will get him back to the pits, but what that problem is, it may be something simply with the potentiometer, which is what operates the throttle, the pedal to the engine, sends the signal to the engine, or maybe something more serious. It could be an air valve leak. Again, the fail-safe systems in these engines just immediately cut the throttle but enable you to get back to the pits. There's teammate Heidfeld being pushed back into his garage, but Massa's going to take another 3-4 minutes to get back at the speed he's going.
To be crawling around the circuit. An anxious moment yesterday for this man, Jacques Villeneuve. He almost collided with David Coulthard and perhaps was a little dubious, pushing Coulthard wide. Definitely correct. Mark Webber was the first to jump out of his car quicker than the V8 supercar pit stop, as we've seen so much here in Australian racing, and he's in the test car already. We saw them setting it up for him this morning, so he'll now go out straight after this in his T car.
There. Now, if Pete's strategy is correct, that that's twitchy there from Montoya, But if Peter's idea is correct about these guys going out on intermediates possibly for the race, then there's going to be at least one car in these teams that should be on intermediates now to find out the wear rate. That was a lock up there at the front from Montoya, so he's actually pushing this quite hard. But that's what should be happening with each team then. One run on intermediates, the other one run on full wets, just to try and get some information together, to find out which is going to be the best way to go. And obviously both Michelin and Bridgestone are going to be evaluating their wear rates, because these cars have got to do a lot longer distance than just this race warm-up. This is not mega wet by recent standards. We've seen a bit more standing water than this. It's good Massa's back, but let's hope that they can fix whatever it is. I believe the Sauber's had a fuel pressure problem.
Heifeld stopped twice at the same point with the fuel pressure problems.
Well, it looks like it's not good, because he's running for the T-car now. T-car means training car, otherwise known as the spare car.
And who would it be set up for?
Well, that's the thing, when we talk about setup, we're not necessarily talking about springs and dampers and aero settings, etc. We're actually talking about the seat position and where the throttle and where the brake pedals are positioned, and also where the heel rest is, and they can be very personal things to a driver. So even though you can slot your own seat in there, it might still be a little further back or a little further forward where it slots in, and that can be very uncomfortable. And as a driver, you've got to be comfortable in these things. You've got to feel like part of the car. In your family road car, if you take a corner quickly, you're moving separately to the car. But in a race car, you've got your seat around you. You're actually part of the fixtures and fittings, and you are absolutely strapped down hard. And you should be very much part of that car to feel everything that's going on and react to it accordingly.
Back into the pits, in fact. That's interesting, because he was on a pretty quick lap at that point.
Yes, he was. Again, we keep trying to get looks at these tyres. I think it's very important just to let the viewers see the differences between what Bridgestone are doing with that tyre philosophy, and we don't get to even look at Ferrari. Everything is covered up. Of course, these tyres also are preheated, so they're going out at an operational temperature, and they're designed to run at temperature. Wet weather tyres run at the same operating temperature, or similar operating temperatures to the dry weather tyre.
Jarno Trulli jumps out of his car, moves over. I think he was in the spare initially, and now presumably going out in his race car. So reasonably happy, presumably, with the installation lap. No oil leaks, no problems. Fisichella doing the same thing. So it's a real game of musical chairs in the early stages of the morning warm-up, John, as everybody just checks that both cars are operating.
And of course Fisichella doing the same thing in the Jordan. He'll jump into the spare car, which was in fact Takuma Sato's race car, which has been repaired, and Jordan going for the safer option, and hopefully they won't need to use that spare car, and that'll go back to the UK and have a proper repair carried out to it if they're not satisfied with what they were able to achieve last night.
Montoya fastest in the session. He's got all the purple colours at the top of the data screen indicating that he's set the pace through all the sectors, but it's not relevant at this point because nobody other than him really has put in a fast lap at this point.
In fact, there are different grades, different styles of Bridgestone tyre. This is pretty much the full wet. There's other ones slightly less coarse design. So within the wet weather tyre range, you've got different designs as well. So we're looking at options within each company as to what they're using. Schumacher back in and deciding that's okay, I'm happy with that car, goes back into his prime race car.
Interesting there, John. You could hear them revving the engine up. He was working something on the steering wheel. Looked like they were just checking the gear engagement systems in some way, and he's had a problem with that in the past here.
In fact, I think that was his race car he's just stepped out of. He's gone into the spare, because normally the spare car sits between the two race cars, and Michael's race car would be on the left of our picture, and I think that he's just jumped out of that race car and got into the spare car.
Montoya ready to go out, and there we can quick glimpse of the Michelin tyres. Of course, Williams already ran with Michelin last year, John, but McLaren have made that switch for this season.
Yes, they decided that the only way I can't believe this.
What is going on here?
This is the spare car that Massa's got into, and at the same part of the circuit, in that spare car, he's just giving us a repeat of what we saw him doing. Again, he's trundling back at this sort of tick over speed.
I have a question here, John. The fact that these guys are at the same part of the circuit, I mean, they were saying it's full fuel pressure problems yesterday, but what is going to cause a problem like this at virtually exactly the same spot? They're presumably have got a lot of fuel in the cars today, because they would be running in race trim, wouldn't they?
They would be certainly running with an amount of fuel that would be for a 1 or a 2 stop race. They wouldn't wouldn't fill the car right up to the very brim. But what's causing that problem? I mean, the team obviously don't know. They would have fixed it, and all I can do is second guess it. But I mean, certainly it is a concern for Peter Sauber looking at the screen. We've seen this happen through Friday through Saturday. They should have been able to fix the problem, identify it and rectify it, but they've not been able to do so. The spare car and Massa's own race car both being afflicted by it. Yesterday, initially, it was Heidfeld. Now it's Massa.
Yeah, it's really very, very strange indeed. Massa touring around at exactly the same spot. You can see the yellow flag zone indicated on our screen there. The yellow dots up at the top of the screen next to the countdown clock, indicating that the yellows are out at some part of the track. It's coming out of turn 12, that area that he's in at the moment. And, well, let's just hope he can make it back, but it's not helping everyone else as he coasts around slowly. There goes Kimi Räikkönen, and it's terribly easy to get him mixed up and think that it might be Mika Häkkinen returning. Their helmet colours are very similar. The style, as you were saying, John,
absolutely.
Very similar.
The head position, everything about the body language of Kimi Räikkönen says Mika Häkkinen to me. I think it's just coincidental because Mika's actually taller than Räikkönen is. But however they've got him seated in the car, and the colour of the helmet, the white with the blue on the top of the helmet, it is just so reminiscent. But particularly it's his own body language, the head position. It's awesome. It's almost eerie.
Well, of course, this is the first Grand Prix for many that we don't see double world champion Mika Häkkinen competing. Mika, no doubt, sitting at home and watching proceedings with interest. I wonder if he's going to feel that he is missing it. Once they actually get out there, once they're racing, and he's not there, how do you think he's going to feel?
I'm sure right now he's sitting watching this at home and thinking, oh, wait, he is saying, I could have put that car in pole position. That's what he's going to be thinking.
You have to think that, I suppose, as a racing driver. You're always going to be that much better than someone else. But I tell you what, Räikkönen's pushing quite hard.
Well, there's a yellow flag out. We see the yellow flags. They're out at the exit of pay at turn 13. And Kimi Räikkönen should be aware of that. He'll have the readout on his screen, so he must pay attention up around area of turn 13.
Well, this could be quite a good lap from Kimi if he keeps it all together and behaves himself. Coming up through the back part of the circuit, heading up towards turns 11 and 12.
Both first and second intermediates, and Räikkönen's time of 1:44.362 is about to be eclipsed.
Oh, look at that!
What did he do?
Under braking into turn 1, and that car really weaving around. Now, could that be a brake balance thing?
Well, it's certainly, I think it's more like a brake temperature thing. Certainly got a major bite in the rear brakes, swung the car one way. I mean, really did a great job keeping the car straight and able to go straight across the grass. Others may not have been able to do that. I mean, for some reason, Finn's got these reactions which are just awesome. Here's Michael Schumacher, traffic ahead of him. It should see an improvement. 44.3 was the time for Räikkönen. Michael Schumacher comes across the line, 41.5, 2.8 seconds quicker.
Wow.
Now, is that a tyre difference, or is that a driver difference, or is that a car difference? Maybe all three.
Maybe all three, but it does indicate, doesn't it, that the Bridgestone tyre is working very effectively in these conditions. Taking a look at Takuma Sato on track now. He'll be starting from the back, remember, after the accident and then not being able to get out. Well, he got out in the spare car, that packed up, and then there wasn't a chance to do any dry running in Fisichella's car. So Sato starting from the back for his first Grand Prix, but he has performed well in wet testing, so I don't think he's going to be worried too much. And Coulthard.
Yes, again down at turn 1. We've seen both the McLarens off track at turn 1. Certainly for Räikkönen, it looked like a rear brake temperature thing. The the grabbing and the brakes flicked the back end one way and the other. With David, we don't know. We have to maybe wait and see on the replay what was his problem. If it's a similar problem, at least the team can identify it very quickly. It may be just a driver error in the case of David.
You were talking about brake temperatures earlier, John, and of course this is quite a hard track on the brakes in the dry. In the wet, they then have to readjust how much brake ducting they use, and that can cause some imbalances.
Well, they will tend to cover up the brake. Here we see, this is Coulthard coming down into turn one. Well, he doesn't seem to have the same problem that Raikkonen have, so I've got to put that one down to David. Just overread the speed he was entering the corner at, and maybe he sensed when he left right front wheel did lock up, so his brake balance, again, that is affected by by brake temperatures. So normally the teams will cover partially the air intakes on the brake ducts to ensure that the brake temperatures do get up to operating temperature, critical with these carbon fibre brakes, discs and brake pads.
Yes, very, very temperature sensitive, and the team's working hard to get them in the operating range of temperature outside that very inconsistent braking, and that's what they'll be making sure that they get correct during this session. Just watching the times, Michael Schumacher fastest at the moment from Coulthard, Kimi Raikkonen in third, Barrichello, then Trulli and Nick Heidfeld in sixth place. You can see the other positions on down the list. We'll see them improve further. We're about halfway through this morning warm-up session, and towards the end of the session I'm sure we'll see several drivers just stringing a few laps together to see what they can achieve.
What I'm curious to see, will anybody be brave enough to try a set of intermediates? In these conditions it's probably marginal, but in another 10 minutes with maybe just 5 remaining, it's quite, Montoya, it's quite possible that McLaren or Ferrari or Williams for that matter might just have a little sneak look. The trouble is, if they go out and find something, then the rest of the pit lane will know all about it.
Montoya using all of his renowned car control in these slippery conditions, but doing a fine job at the moment, finding himself but pushed down the time order, but he's going to put it together on this lap. I think this will be an improvement on his personal best so far. It might not be enough though, no, quite a long way off Michael Schumacher's time, but it should move him up the order a little bit. I think he might string a few laps together here now. Across the line he goes, nothing particularly spectacular from him on the Michelin tyre, but we have got a couple of Michelin runners well up there, because Coulthard and Raikkonen running second and third.
Michael Schumacher, this is where he lost time. I'm just watching him on the screens. He had a personal, in fact, quickest. Look at the paint. Look, blue and white paint. That's at exit of turn 13. I saw that on the track. I mean, the paint is actually, whatever sort of paint they've used, it's actually almost being dissolved by rain and mixture of rubber and power.
That's amazing to see. Particularly, we were watching Raikkonen a moment ago. He was going over some of the curbs and didn't seem to do that at all.
No, but I noticed just a lap ago that there was a sign of that paint. You can see it again as they come out of 15. Now, I'm sure the drivers are not going to be terribly happy about that, and they may go and speak to the technical delegates and say, look, there's a problem in the rain, because is it... Let's look again and see what happens. Michael comes down into turn 13. Well, he's going a bit too quick. And no, that's not isn't turn 13 either. It's
turn 1, isn't it? And so Michael as well taking a little trip across the grass at turn 1. That's where we saw both Kimi Raikkonen and Coulthard going off.
Indeed it is.
So Michael certainly experimenting a bit out there this morning.
Look, you can see in the side pod of the car where the front wheels have thrown up that blue and white paint. It's adhered to the side of the car now. And I'm not happy when paint or whatever they put down in these curbs starts to amalgamate with water, because it'll make it into a really, really slippery, gooey substance.
Yeah, and that's not good news at all. But the track itself, as you can see, the water clearing fairly quickly, and the speeds building, the times dropping very rapidly.
And also Michael now staying off that curb. You're not tempting fate by riding the curb. He probably feels he could. Again, you can see there, exit of turn 14, where people have ridden the curb, and the blue and white are beginning to blend into one sort of yucky, sort of whitey blue colour.
Well, let's see if this is an improvement. No, it's not. Michael Schumacher fastest already in this session, a slowish lap on that last one after his trip across the grass down at turn number 1. Now let's see whether he can keep it on the island this time.
Well, he's managed to do that successfully, and good news for Jaguar and Eddie Irvine. Let's look at Ralph. You look at the tyres, look at the muck, the paint.
That's amazing.
I've never ever seen that at any circuit anywhere in the world. They must be using a water-based paint or something.
They must be. I've never seen a pickup like that on a tyre before, and it can't make it much fun for the drivers, a loss of grip coming up to the next part, I should think. Now we're riding on board with Ralf Schumacher. Look at again, picked up the paint from that right-hand curb.
I'm going to have to investigate this, Ben, after the session's over. I'm going to have a look and see what's going on here, because I've never seen a paint like they're saying here come off those curbs. Cannot be surely a water-soluble paint that they've put on the curbing.
I wouldn't have thought so, but certainly the way it looks at the moment. Heading out of turn number 12 up towards turn 13, the Ascari right-hander taken in third gear in the dry, around 75 miles an hour. Lost a little bit of speed in these wet conditions, but just look at the amount of paint on the road through that section. Coming through turn 14, that's pretty quick right-hander under normal conditions. And then the last two corners, this is turn 15, which leads around to the pit lane entry on the right, but he stays out for another lap and will continue round through that last corner and staying off the curb, you notice, before coming across the line.
And it's having an effect on the times cars are doing, since the drivers have realised that this curb, there's something going on, that they're seeing suddenly the tread of their tyre is completely white. There again, just flicks the edge of the curb as he comes out of turn 1 into turn 2. They're staying well away from them because they realise it is so slippery. Ralf Schumacher down in 5th place, and his time 1:45.188 was a personal quickest, so he's found some time, but nothing so far able to match or compete with Michael Schumacher, who's doing a 1:41.509. As Michael Schumacher makes his way back into the pits.
Indeed.
Oh, he's not happy. He wasn't happy about that.
Well,
there's the paint.
Certainly a lot of work going on down there to clean up the cars after all this paint's being thrown around.
The trouble is, Ben, now that it dries out on the side pods, because the side pods get very hot with the radiators and whatever beside them, the paints are sticking to the actual colour scheme of the car.
They're going to have to get the T-cut out for this afternoon, aren't they, to try and clean up the bodywork after the mess that's been created from this morning's wet session and the paint. There's only just over 8.5 minutes to go. You can see the countdown clock at the top of the picture. At the moment, it's still Michael Schumacher fastest in this morning warm-up, but not apparently terribly happy with things. We've seen him off the road on more occasions than normal, I have to say. Yesterday he went wide as well on his attempt to beat Rubens Barrichello's time. So Michael just not quite as at ease as we thought he looked on Friday, when everything seemed to be going his way.
Well, you know, some days you get good days, some days you get days which are better. And this is just probably an average good day for Michael. But nonetheless, I think the rhythm of this session, probably he's not entirely content with. And I think having had a few moments on these curbs where the paint is now coming away, you know, he's probably got that in his mind. He's thinking about things he shouldn't be worried about right now. Just focus on what he's got to do, go through his work program. Just everybody now staying way, way off those curbs and realizing that they are providing a very treacherous little trap if anybody wants to go and investigate them again.
So Juan Pablo Montoya just takes it very steady, very easily. He is coming back into the pits. Michael Schumacher still fastest from Barrichello, Coulthard, and then Ralf and Raikkonen.
Yeah, Ralf Schumacher was 5th, now up to 4th. So Michael back out again, changing cars. And just deciding, I think, which car. Oh, he's going to do a practice start. So under the two Jordans.
Let's just watch him here.
Yeah, that was Sato and the Jordan doing his little bit of practice start.
Using the launch control system that is all employed now. Oh, and that didn't work, did it? Looks like it...
It might have had a stall, I think.
Yeah. Very sensible, of course, to use the time in the warm-up for this, John, and not all drivers actually do bother, do they?
No, but I mean, Michael is such a consummate professional. He will go through every aspect of the Grand Prix. And, Ray, look there. The team, Ben, that had the most effective launch control last year was Benetton. In the last part of the season, last 4 or 5 races, they had traction control, launch control, unlike anything we've ever seen before. And part of the reason that they had was that the partnership with Renault and Nissan, there's a business partnership there. They had developed a lot of the software for that traction control or launch control system. And it's something that all the team principals, all the technical delegates, Ross, Braun, whoever, would stand at the end of the pits and watch, because whatever they had to come up with in conjunction with Renault was unbelievable. It just shot the car forward. You'd think that, I don't know how they did it, nobody else seemed to work it out either.
It is amazing, isn't it, the introduction of this. Just to explain to people who perhaps don't know, John, the launch control, basically it's a button, isn't it, that the driver uses to get away at the start of the race.
That's a sort of pretty simplistic way of saying it, yes. But it's a button that controls an extremely sophisticated electronic mechanisms to enable the car to move forward as quickly as possible over the minimum amount of wheel spin or wheel slip. Trying to put 850 or 60 horsepower through two rear tyres, which are not very big, 13 inches in diameter, 14-inch wide rim, is virtually impossible. So they use extremely sophisticated electronics to achieve that ability.
Well, you guys used to seem to manage all right with that launch control.
Yeah, but we had big black lines for about 500 yards before we ever got traction.
Well, we're seeing Felipe Massa on track. They seem to have at last solved that problem that he had in both Saubers that he has gone out in this morning. And at last it's actually managed to go through the back part of the track without slowing down and almost stopping. So relief for Felipe Massa with just under 5 minutes of the session to go.
Yeah, and he's certainly, I mean, Jarno Trulli's not, well, Trulli's actually making his way back into the pits, but Massa almost overrun him as they came through turn 12, and he's looking to make up for frustrating times. And let's have a look and see what the young Brazilian is going to do currently. He's only done a 1:59.1, and in fact he's only done 4 laps. Most of those have been done at a walking pace, so this lap is going to be somewhat quicker indeed. And he gets another couple of laps under his belt. He'll probably find himself somewhere down in the middle 140s.
Well, he's moved up to 7th place, yes, so that's a good effort considering first flying lap.
Extremely good. Look at him throwing, look at he just drives it into the corner, throws it in, doesn't worry about the curbs. Everybody's staying off. He doesn't know yet that the curbs, you should not go anywhere near. There should be a danger sign up and say, stay off these curbs, they're slippery.
Yeah, well, he's not bothered about that at all. He's just attacking, and it's good to see more young talent. That's Rubens Barrichello also experimenting with his launch control. Michael has just gone out of the pits as well. This was a replay of Michael coming in earlier on. Not very happy at all, Michael. It's not often that you see him quite so vehement in the cockpit.
No, I think you saw a few toys being thrown into the cockpit there by Michael Schumacher, and clearly he's got a lot to think about, a lot on his mind. Let's watch and see what the two McLarens do. Well, it's very difficult to judge. Oh, his wheel spin there, certainly from Raikkonen's car.
Now, on track, the Renault. The two Renaults at the moment. Let's just take a look at where they're running. Trulli 9th fastest overall. Button way down in 18th. He's only done 4 laps. He's sitting in the pits as Jenson Button. So I don't know whether they've got some sort of problem with that car, because it's a surprise to see him so far down. Jarno Trulli here doing a reasonable job, though, inside the top 10. Looking through the timing list there, you can see Nick Heidfeld 7th. Massa has popped straight up to 8th with that time he set. There's Trulli 9th. Eddie Irvine 10th. That's a bit better than it was yesterday, so that's good news. Just behind him, Frentzen, Panis. Oh, and stopped on track is Giancarlo Fisichella, and that's down at the turn 3 area.
So the clock is out and try to go.
Well, that's unfortunate to see the yellow flags out once again, and Jordan not having everything going their own way, are they, John?
No, it's not. That's in fact, that's Fisichella's spare car, designated spare car, which Sato was driving in the Grand Prix, and it's been a bit of a trial for Sato. I mean, he's had a pretty good run on Friday, then things sort of deteriorated on Saturday, but Raikkonen giving Heidfeld no mercy whatsoever.
Well, I wonder if there's going to be a bit of needle between these two this year. Heidfeld reckons he should have had the chance to drive for McLaren, and I'm sure that if he ever gets the opportunity to put one on Kimi Raikkonen, he will take full advantage of it. And in these conditions, though, he's just got to concentrate on getting through cleanly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, frankly, Raikkonen didn't even know Heidfeld was there, and Raikkonen's coming back into the pits as Heidfeld will feel a little bit aggrieved that, you know, is the world really conspiring against me? But he's going on to continue. Currently 7th quickest in a 45.2. He's not going to beat that, but of course he lost quite a substantial amount of time. Well, Raikkonen was waking up to the fact there's a car behind him.
1.5 minutes of the session to go. What have we learnt? Well, that's a little bit difficult to say. The track conditions have been changing throughout. I suppose we have seen quite a lot of teams getting into a little bit of trouble, certainly jumping around, trying out different cars, 1 or 2 having technical problems. Michael certainly wasn't very happy in the mid part of the session. He is back out there now. Here is the pole sitter, Rubens Barrichello, just finding his way past Mika Salo, but not a lot of conclusions, I think, that can be drawn from this session.
Nothing that's particularly clear. I mean, you have to say you've got two Bridgestone cars at the top of the list. Then you've got Michelin, and then Kimi Räikkönen. There's the big shot. Oh no, it's not a big spin anyway.
Mika Salo, that is.
That was certainly one at the end of down into turn 13. It was Mika Salo. Now whether that was a mechanical failure or whether it was a driver error.
The rain just started falling then. We saw the picture of people putting up more umbrellas and putting on jackets, and I just wondered whether he got caught out by another downpour over at that part of the track.
It didn't look like it. I mean, there's no rain falling there as such, and I think maybe it was either simply a misjudgment. Here we see, well, he caught the water. There was standing water there when he was braking. That's what I would have thought. He was in the middle of the track. He let Barrichello go through as they came round into turns 10 and 11 and 12. He was well over to the left-hand side on screen, right-hand side of the track, and it just looked like the back wheel caught the water as he got off the throttle on the brakes and just flicked it into a big spin.
Amazing, isn't it? Just what it can take. The checkered flag is out to end the morning warm-up session. 30 minutes completed with the last free practice session, if you like, of the weekend before the race gets underway. Michael Schumacher ends up fastest. I don't think David Coulthard's going to beat that on his final flying lap here. No, he's quite a long way off. Hit a 1:45.3. David previously did a 1:43.5. So Coulthard third fastest in this morning's warm-up, and Ferrari again with a very healthy time advantage.
And really what's most significant is that advantage is 2 seconds to Michael Schumacher over David Coulthard, and that is not just down to the car or driver, that is clearly in the tyre department, because in these conditions, unlike what we saw yesterday when it was dry, it's unlikely that temperature is going to be the critical factor in terms of tyre performance.
And I guess backing that one up, John, is the fact that both Saubers, which are also running on Bridgestones, went well this morning, with Massa coming up to 6th and Heidfeld in 7th.
Indeed.
Still not quite finished, because although the checkered flag's out, they're all rushing round to finish their current laps, and of course these times still count. Let's see whether there's going to be any change, and we're looking at our timing screen. It doesn't look as though anyone's going to put in a storming lap at the end of the session. The two Ferraris crossing the line together. It's still Michael Schumacher ends up fastest, from Rubens Barrichello in 2nd, and Felipe Massa once again walks away from his Sauber.
But he did look impressive when he was on track, coming down into turn 1. Again, the car stopped at the same part of track that we've seen now 3 times in this session for Massa. Yesterday for Massa, as well as for Heidfeld.
It really is amazing, isn't it? And let's just hope that they can solve that problem on an electric glitch or whatever it is before the start of the race this afternoon. Could be very embarrassing for the team that thoroughly earned their 4th place in the Constructors' Championship last year, with a great car and storming performances from both Nick Heidfeld and from Kimi Räikkönen in his debut year. Now Felipe Massa trying to follow in those very successful footsteps. Look at the rain coming down at the bottom part of the circuit through the marina area around by the lake. It really is coming down quite heavily, and John, prospects have to be changeable conditions this afternoon. Let's just run through the times.
Well, Michael Schumacher and Barrichello clearly the quickest. Coulthard and Ralf Schumacher 3rd and 4th, and Ben Michelin 2 seconds away from Schumacher. And there's only nothing between Coulthard and Ralf Schumacher, and Räikkönen's a second or half a second away from them. It's going to be very, very difficult, I think, for McLaren and Williams, if the conditions are like this, to have a sniff of anything other than one podium position, and that's 3rd place. Advantage
perhaps of running the 2001 car for Ferrari. They know how to set the car up for the rain as well. Everyone else trying to set up their new cars for the wet, and perhaps not having so much experience of that. Looking further on down at the list, Jenson Button ended up 18th and didn't get many laps in, and I hope that they managed to solve whatever problems he had with his car. Webber and Young in the Minardis ending up towards the rear, and De La Rosa right at the back without a representative time as well.
He only had 3 laps in practice this morning. Clearly another problem for De La Rosa, and I mean, Jaguar Eddie Irvine had a good run, in fact very happy I think with what he has achieved, but starting 19th in the grid, all he can do is just sit back and wait and let it all unfold in front of him.
So no mistakes from Rubens Barrichello. He seemed more relaxed. He seemed very happy after earning that pole position yesterday by 0.005 of a second from his teammate Michael Schumacher. He said they were going to off to have dinner yesterday evening and perhaps talk strategies about into that first corner. The first corner here is notorious. We've seen problems in the past, and I just hope that these two don't get themselves into bother there.
Well, the first corner here in Melbourne is reminiscent of the first corner at the Nürburgring, the Castrol chicane, and it is also in a notorious first corner shunt area. It is easy, believe me, in dry conditions to misjudge your braking. In conditions which I suspect are not going to be a lot different to what we're seeing now with the spray and the misjudgments that we've seen when drivers have been on their own going into turn one, it would be very, very irrational if anybody didn't have a major misjudgment and piled into the back of somebody or whatever. Please, in the driver briefings, I'm sure they've had them already, but they may well have another one. I'm sure there will be concern over these curbs with the paint being leached off them. So I'm sure there will be re-emphasised to everybody to take it easy on the opening lap, particularly into turn one.
Taking a look into the McLaren pit there with David Coulthard, looking fired up, looking motivated. That's what we want to see. He's got to take advantage of the situation at McLaren at the moment, where he can polarise the team around him. But every session counts in doing that. Once again, he's done a good job this morning, but they must be concerned about the gap between themselves and Ferrari. As you say, John, it might be a tyre factor. They are ahead of everyone else, but David knows he cannot afford to let a race go by without pushing every single lap.
Well, if he can't beat the Ferraris, he's got to do the next best thing, and that's come third. He's got to get those 4 points. He's got to get on the podium. He's got to score.
For joining us. Not long now until you start this Grand Prix. What are your feelings at the moment?
Well, the warm-up was quite difficult in terms of conditions out there. It was got a little bit dry, not dry, but a bit dry line in the middle of the session, but we're trying wets and intermediates pretty much on this car for the first time, so it's a new experience for us. I wouldn't mind the race being dry, actually.
Can you explain the weather in Melbourne? It's summertime there, isn't it? Looks more like Great Britain.
Yeah, I know. We should be having the race a bit further north, but it's the first time in 7 years we've had a wet weekend here in Melbourne. So they've been very lucky, and they've saved it for my debut, unfortunately, but made it a little bit more difficult. But it's going okay. The guys are doing a good job here, and we're fighting the war with the soldiers we got. We're having fun.
Now everybody wants to get a look at you, to have a chat with you. Is that getting in the way on your debut?
It's been very, very busy this week, I have to say. I arrived on Monday, which is probably a little bit early in terms of, in hindsight, I should have arrived probably on Thursday morning. But if I'm here next year, hopefully it'll be nothing like it has been this year in terms of the off-track stuff. But the reception that the whole team has got here has been very special, so we can't complain.
Morning, Marcus Perry.
Hey, how are you, mate?
All right, given your choice on your debut, what would you do? Would you have it wet or dry?
I'd prefer it to be dry, actually, mate. We've got a lot of sorting out in this car in the greasy conditions to be done, and ideally a few of the problems, well, ideally it'd be dry, and so some of the problems are coming out even more so in the greasy conditions. So it'd be nice for it to be dry and run in the race in those conditions, because that's what we've done most of our testing in, which has been very limited, of course, anyway.
Mark, you come from the cut and thrust of Formula 3000 recently, second in the championship last year. How are you finding the road manners in Formula 1 out there from the others? Yeah,
it's good. You know, they're professional, and it's something which you know, I'm learning all the time as well. It's my first Formula 1 sessions are behind me now, and there's a lot of firsts happening this weekend for me, so the road manners are quite good. In 3000 it's probably a little bit worse, I have to say.
Exactly, and I understand the models are pretty good out there as well, mate.
Mate, you're on the wrong side of the world this weekend, let me tell you.
Yeah. I'll follow you soon. Back to Matt.
Mark, good luck. Enjoy your day.
Cheers. Thank you.
And with that, let's have a look at the highlights of this session.
Thanks very much.
unacceptable to run a race with those curbs leaching paint off. It's extremely slippery, and you drag it onto the racetrack, you make the racetrack slippery.
I tell you what, maybe it's normally, of course, we notice how good Melbourne looks. It is one of the best presented tracks, isn't it, anywhere in the world? There's no doubt. And perhaps they simply put down a fresh coat of paint last night to make it look extra special, and with the conditions, it hasn't dried off properly.
Well, I don't know the question of drying off or not, or whether it's actually become soluble. Whichever it is, it's certainly... I've never, I think, in memory, seen anything quite as dramatic as we've seen here this morning. I mean, once drivers went on the curbs, they expected to be slippery because the paint in itself is a naturally slippery surface, and put water on top of it, you get a real amalgam. But what you're seeing here is the paint being just literally scrubbed off and going into like a slurry and just letting the car slide. I mean, it is treacherous out there. But what is worse is it's being dragged onto the racing surface, and that's really my concern. Drivers know if there's a problem to avoid it, but there's enough paint on the surface to, it's got to be cleaned up.
Well, I'm sure they'll all be sorting that out. The mats and the umbrellas are gradually being removed from site. That's good news. The rain stops falling. Plenty of support races going on over the course of the weekend. There's a celebrity race involving Mini Coopers with stars of stage and screen, and not many races in it, so that usually means you get plenty of panel damage. I think the fans will be looking forward to that. The Australian V8 touring cars are also running around the Albert Park circuit, but of course later on the first Grand Prix of the season coming up.
Well, with all those support events going on, it puts further pressure on the organisation to do something about those curbs. Because certainly the big V8s, I mean, they are absolute animals. They'll use both track, curb, grass, whatever. In the celebrity race and the minis, I mean, they'll be spinning off like tops anyway, because those conditions are actually very tricky for amateurs to go out and have a race, and some of them are very skilled, in fact, but some of them really are there just for the show. So it's a bit of a taxing time. There's Mika Salo's Toyota, and in fact we had a review on the highlights, and I think that Salo was very lucky. He got away with only knocking the nose. I don't believe he's any suspension damage at the rear of the car, and the rear wing didn't appear to make contact with the wall either. So it'll be a check with the car, put it up on the stands, and a very, very good examination. If there's any hesitation or doubt, they can always replace a corner on the car and to make sure that nothing is left to chance.
Because first race of 2002 is getting closer, and this man's heart is going to be beating, and it's for the wrong reasons, because he's going to be thinking, my goodness, am I going to be able to start this race or at least complete a lap at the moment because of the problems the Sauber is currently experiencing. And from our information, it's fuel pressure problems. We don't know or seem to know what's causing it, but it's happening with such a frequency that my earlier prediction for a race surprise could be a major surprise to me that they don't do a lap.
In general terms, though, if it is a wet race, does that give the lesser runners more of a chance?
It certainly used to before traction control, because, if you've got a driver who's very, very good and able to balance the car really well, then he might be able to make up the difference. But now I'm not so sure. I think that if the lesser runner, the slower runner, keeps his nose clean, then he can maybe be sure of making up some more positions, because there will undoubtedly be some mistakes and spins and offs. So that's one thing. There again, if he's particularly brave, he might have nothing to lose, where some people who feel they're going to be in a challenge position across the year might be slightly more conservative.
Interesting email zipping through there as you were speaking earlier on. Ferrari were asked who they were impressed by. They said Massa, which I think there's probably general consensus on, right. And your mate Mark Webber.
Oh, good. So Ferrari aren't being politically correct in Australia then, are they? No, I mean, good for Mark. He's doing a good job. But Ferrari know how to play the game as well. But I'm really going to be interested to see how Mark gets on. He's a good lad, very quick driver. But there's a number of people, not necessarily just Brits or Brit-related, that I'm really interested to see how they get on. I'm going to love to see how Sato gets on in the Jordan, because I think the guy's a blinding talent as well. Got some real new blood coming in here.
You can't really stress enough what sort of pressure Mark Webber's under, actually, because this has now become the biggest sporting event in Australia. There are 85,000 people sitting down to lunch, corporate lunch, today. It's a huge deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be thinking about that too much. They're going to be thinking about those red lights coming on, fading to zero, and then off they go because, you know, screaming down to that first corner, that's where it's all going to happen. There's going to be a lot of people trying to make names and careers out there today, and unfortunately that first corner comes up very, very quickly at the start of a race, and it's on all their minds. Yeah,
Schumacher was saying just a few hours ago, in fact, that he was hoping that people don't go too silly at that first corner.
Well, of course he is, because
he's up the front.
He's at the front. When you've got all these people barreling through, you're the one who gets smacked out of the way. So being on the front row is, it's where you want to be, because it gives you the best possible opportunity, especially, as everybody's been saying, in the rain. But, you know, you can get wiped out from behind, no problem. Absolutely no problem.
I mentioned there are 85,000 people sitting down to corporate lunches in Melbourne today. Before they move on to the lunch table, we had a word with some of them, asking them who they think is going to be world champion at the end of this season.
Who's going to be world champion this year?
Michael Schumacher.
Michael Schumacher. Schumacher.
All the same. We'll see. 17 races to go. Thanks.
Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah, Kimi Räikkönen, he's going to take it. Yeah, the first year McLaren, I think he's going to win it. He's fast and young.
I hope Coulthard, but I'm afraid it's going to be Schumacher again.
Undoubtedly Michael Schumacher, greatest champion ever has driven a car, undoubtedly.
I think David Coulthard is really trying for something. Montoya's coming up, Button's not doing bad. Or, you know, in the race, it's anybody's game if you know, it's exciting.
Schumacher, I think. Ralph or Michael?
Michael, of course.
Who's going to be this year's world champion?
Michael Schumacher.
Michael Schumacher.
McLaren David Coulthard all the way.
Michael Schumacher.
Why is that?
He's a good racer. I like him.
Definitely David Coulthard.
Juan Pablo Montoya, for sure.
What makes you think it won't be Michael Schumacher?
He's got too much competition this year, too much close competition. I reckon Coulthard, Montoya, Sunday.
Who's going to be world champion this year?
Hopefully Mark Webber. Being Fosters, we have to go for Mark Webber.
Go Ferrari!
Which driver?
Oh, whatever one.
Who's champion in your mind?
Michael Schumacher, definitely.
Hopefully one of these girls.
Schumacher for sure, mate. Easy.
Schumacher.
We'd like to see Webber, though. Oh, I just hope it's not Schumacher. That's about it.
Oh, me. What can I say?
Schumacher.
No way. I'd say I'll go Ralph.
Schumacher, definitely.
Michael.
Yep, definitely.
Who's going to be world champion this year?
I wouldn't have a clue, mate. I don't follow the racing.
What are you here for, then?
Cleaning.
Well, have a good weekend.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You see, with 85,000 lunches, there's an awful lot of cleaning up to be done as well.
You're right. I noticed nobody went for Enrico Bernaldi.
No, funny that.
No, mind you, I tell you, Enrique was a real tiger in Formula 3 a couple of years ago, and I think he's got a future as long as he's got a car under him. But he impressed me no end last year, how he kept his cool, keeping Dave Coulthard behind him in Monaco. All right, he was going slow, but he was being a little bit brighter than most people. Schumacher, but to keep Dave Coulthard behind him. So I think, you know, and doing that on top of the pressures of Monaco, I mean, that place is murderous.
So he wasn't just being PK'd then?
No, I mean, he's got a race to run. He's trying to make a name. This is what I'm saying about the start of this race. This is where Formula 1 is now moving on, I think, more than in the last couple of years, as far as new blood coming in. We're seeing the next generation of drivers coming out there. I think it's absolutely fascinating. Or at least not just the new blood, but the stage 2 of the new blood, you know, such as Kimi Räikkönen now moving up to McLaren into the big league. There's a lot of activity there. I think it's going to be a fantastic season. I mean, one of those spectators there was saying that Michael's not going to have it all his own way. I hope he's not, and I think there's enough cause to believe that he won't, actually. I mean, especially if Rubens has got his game completely together. If this isn't a factor of the weather, if this isn't a little bit of luck going Rubens' way because of the rain coming at the right time, maybe his own teammate can start pushing him.
Well, that's the old guard. The new guard, very much led by Toyota. It's their first ever entree into Formula 1, but it didn't end too well in that last session. A bit of a crunch for Mika Salo. Let's get the detail on that now in the Toyota pit with Gustav Brunner.
Gustav Brunner, Toyota's weekend to be going quite well. I think a couple of minutes ago, Mika Salo went off, just a driver error.
Nothing too serious. Things went well up to now for us, and also this little spin from Mika Salo, not too much problem. Now he just slipped, he has been too much on the white line. The white lines are dangerous here in the wet, and he knocked the front wing up, but no other damage to the car, no problems whatsoever.
You're starting this afternoon in 14th and 16th. What's a good result for you?
Really, we want to see the flag today. It doesn't matter how much we are behind both cars to see the flag. That is what we are dreaming of.
Gustav, thanks a lot.
He's dreaming. Is he telling the truth, though? I just get the idea that maybe they're a little bit better than they say they are.
I don't know, maybe. I mean, they're taking a very sensible approach. I mean, they've got massive funding. They're looking at it as a multi-year programme. I mean, Gustav's been around for so long. I mean, his entrance licence is in Latin. You know, he's been out there a long, long time. I mean, he was out there when I was in F1 and way before me. So, I mean, they've got a lot of good people in that team. They know where they want to go. You talk to the drivers and they're pretty laid back about it, and they're towing the corporate line saying, well, you know, we're out there to learn at the moment, we'll put it together, let's see where we go.
Well, no matter how old he is, Salo can still make mistakes, and this was a mistake, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a mistake, actually, unless he had a similar problem to that which befell Takuma Sato in the Jordan, which was a non-selected gear selection. So
that's lost me.
Well, a non-selected gear selection means that the gearbox is doing something you don't want it to do.
Right.
Yeah. So and that can change the drive, as in lock the wheels. But that looked like it was acceleration to me.
As a rule of thumb, with the amount of telemetry and computer wizardry and gizmos available to the teams, you can't really get away with saying, oh.
I know, it's murder nowadays, it really is. I mean, we used to be able to make all sorts of excuses, you know, Fox ran out on me, all this kind of stuff. They can look at all the data now and find out exactly what's happening. I was testing for Benetton once, and I came in and Michael Schumacher told me, look, you can take Bridge Corner flat, right? Well, I'd already been round it a few times, and I was thinking, you've got to be joking. No way. Anyway, I went out and I was determined if Michael had done it, I'm going to do it. So I did it and I've lost it big time. Car went completely sideways, got lucky, full opposite lock, went from here to there. Somehow the big hand from God came down, picked me up and took me back to the pits. That was great. So I sat there and I wanted to just play it down. And Pat Simmons came back in and said, have a little problem, did we? So I said, no problem. So he said, telemetry shows you on full opposite lock at 180 miles an hour. So I said, you knew about that one. And it turned out that where Michael was saying take it flat was on light tanks with new tyres. And being the rock ape I am, I had like half full tanks with old tyres, so that's why I had a bit of a problem. He's better than me as well, of course, but that's...
It's modest of you to say that.
No, I don't really mean it at all, but...
Now then, it was a game of two halves thus far for Peter Sauber. He must be delighted with Felipe Massa's performance, not so delighted with the performance of his car. Let's find out what's been going on there.
Peter, Felipe was actually very quick by the end of that session, but it was a very troubled morning for him.
Yes, I think he has 3 times the same problem. I'm quite sure it's a software failure.
And is it related to the trouble that Nick had yesterday?
No, Nick yesterday has a problem with the fuel pressure.
So how confident can you be before the race that you're going to get this problem solved? Well, let's hope you do, and very best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He's smiling, you were smiling.
No, I just thought the same thing. Peter, he said it's a software problem and the other bit's a fuel pressure problem. I'm just wondering if it's the software that runs the fuel pressure plant.
Well, they haven't got long to fix it, have they? No,
I mean, Peter Sauber just turned around and said he's not confident. You know, he's just done a Ratner's there, hasn't he?
Well, I can't mention the word that Ratner mentioned, but it's a shame, really, isn't it? Because he's emerged in a matter of, what, 2 days into a real young star.
I mean, they've produced a good car. The car's good. Obviously, they've got Ferrari engines. It's really working well, and the boys are great. I mean, they've got 2 real little stars there. I've been shouting my mouth off about Sauber for quite a while. I really, really believe they're capable of doing something and upsetting the apple cart. So I'm pleased I didn't put a bet on for this week at the moment.
And a spare of thought for Nick Heidfeld, sitting there in the pit thinking I had Raikkonen, and he got into McLaren ahead of me, even though I had all the contacts with Mercedes, and now this bloke pops up.
Don't worry, we'll manage to keep that anger up across the season, because just to explain what happened there, is that Nicky Heidfeld has been a favourite of McLaren Mercedes for a long time. They looked after him coming through Formula 3000, then with the McLaren Junior team. He's had a lot of help, a lot of backing, a lot of input, being a test driver to McLaren Mercedes as well. So you think you're in as a driver. Then suddenly this new kid gets in as your teammate, does really well in the first half of the season, but then you take care of him in the second half of the season, which Nicky Heidfeld really did, but he still gets to jump over you to go to McLaren Mercedes. Now, he's not going to be looking at, you know, Raikkonen any differently, really. He hasn't got a target painted on his head now, but he just wants to... It would upset you. It'd annoy you, you know, and he just wants to say to McLaren, you know, I think you've got the wrong guy there.
Well, McLaren have got Raikkonen, whether Heidfeld likes it or not, and so too has Coulthard. And now it's been a quiet start to the season for him, and yet looking through the old research, and there was copious amounts of it, as you understand, a lot of people are going for Coulthard.
Yeah, I really hope David does well, and I hope he does well because I know him, I like him, he's British, but personally I want to see a massive fight. You know, I want to see Michael fighting, Rubens fighting, David fighting, Kimi fighting, Juan fighting, what's the other Schumacher's name?
I'm just wondering whether you were at that Tyson press conference.
Yeah, I think I've just got punch drunk. But I just, for all of us, I want to see it as more than Michael run away with a championship. I think everybody feels the same way. So it's in all our interest that the McLaren Mercedes is competitive. But, you know, there's so many inter-wars here, or inter-rivalries. Remember, you've got McLaren, the engine partner of, Mercedes, the engine partner of McLaren. You know, they don't want to be upstaged by their German rivals BMW, do they? You know, you've got all that going on in the background. Internally, you've got these drivers who really need to stand out. I think it's even more pronounced than it's been for a long time about this driver against driver business. I mean, even when it was Coulthard and Hakkinen, you know, sometimes Mika had the advantage on David and vice versa. People would talk about it, but I think it's been blowing up now a lot more between Schumacher Jr. and Juan Pablo Montoya, and of course, you know, Kimi Raikkonen and Dave Coulthard. I think the stage is definitely set for some very interesting internal struggles across the year as well.
You've got about 10 seconds to tell me who's going to win the race.
This race, I can't possibly see it's going to be anybody else beginning with Michael Schumacher.
Right. I think most people are in agreement with you. So you've watched it all here on Formula 1 Digital Plus, and now we're looking forward to the race, the first race of the 2002 season. Join us in 2.5 hours for the Foster's Australian Grand Prix, when Perry and I will be joined by Damon Hill. Perry and I will see you then. Bye for now.